Most people cannot bear the demand of real inner sacrifice, so they project it outward. The alchemical work, the descent, the burning, the offering of the withheld portion, is displaced onto the world. Instead of undergoing the decomposition in themselves, they become endlessly fascinated by the pain of others. The crimes, the conspiracies, the animal abuse, the systemic evil, the trauma of clients. This is not merely a psychological habit, it is an energetic one. Every time attention and emotional charge are poured into outer dramas, a current is generated. That current does not disappear. In occult terms, it becomes food. The archonic powers, the lesser rulers of this density, feed on precisely this displaced intensity. The more a person remains fixated on what is wrong, quote, out there, unquote, the more they generate the very substance those forces live on. The dramas appear endless because the feeding is mutual. The psyche needs the external darkness to avoid its own offering, and the archons need the emotional charge the psyche keeps producing. There is something still more revealing in the quiet relief many people feel when they witness others suffering. A part of the psyche experiences a subtle improvement in its own state when pain is seen elsewhere. This is a form of transference. The unintegrated suffering inside is momentarily lightened by being located outside. The common consolation, quote, think of those who have it worse than you, unquote, participates in the same mechanism. It does not heal, it merely relocates the charge. By comparing one's own pain to a greater outer pain, the individual avoids direct contact with what is actually present in them. The suffering is not undergone and offered, it is deferred through comparison. Energetically, this still feeds the lower forces because the residual claim remains intact and the emotional current continues to flow outward rather than being gathered. The more the required sacrifice is externalized, the stronger the demonic side becomes. What is not offered inwardly sinks into the shadow and into the lower regions that older language called hell. There the unknown force grows. As it grows, the ego feels increasingly haunted, pressured, and less in control. The very attempt to keep the pain outside intensifies the sense of being pursued by it. The demons are not weakened by outer focus, they are nourished and enlarged by it. This is the biggest trap. It feels like moral seriousness, compassion, or awakened awareness. In reality, it is a continuous leakage of power. The individual loses the ability to gather their own force because it is constantly being spent on the collective stage. The trauma gurus and professional healers often refine this mechanism. By remaining permanently oriented toward other people's wounds, they stay in the orbit of suffering without completing their own. The client's pain becomes a renewable energy source that keeps the healer's residual claim intact. The language is compassion, the energetic effect is still feeding. The same falsification appears at the heart of much modern Christianity. Jesus is turned into a substitute external blood sacrifice so that the believer never has to undergo the real offering. The cross is treated as something that happened once, outside the self, rather than the pattern that must be lived inwardly. This is the opposite of what he taught. When he drove the money changers out of the temple and called them robbers, he was attacking the entire economy of externalized sacrifice. The belief that one could buy or transfer the required offering onto another. Using his blood as a permanent external payment is simply a more refined version of the same temple transaction he condemned. Self-destructive behaviors follow the same pattern. Cutting, excessive tattooing as self-harm, addiction, or any deliberate wounding of the body can feel like a form of sacrifice. It is not. These acts still leave the heart unoffered. They discharge pressure without ever placing the deeper residual claim on the altar. As Death wrote in Bite the Pain, quote, not a drop of blood is drawn, but you know how it bleeds. Beware of the sharp-edged weapon called human being. Unquote. The real bleeding is inward. Outer self-harm is only another way of keeping the true offering at a distance. Energetically, the mechanism is identical. An external sacrifice, whether of animals, of a historical savior, of the body itself, or of endless attention to the world's evil, still leaves the residual claim intact inside the individual. The unoffered portion remains. That portion continues to generate the emotional charge on which lower forces feed. The demons, or archons, are not starved by the outer ritual. They are often nourished by it, because the real vessel stays sealed and the personal power stays leaked. The alternative is not indifference to suffering. It is the refusal to let outer darkness or outer sacrifice become the primary altar. When the withheld portion is finally gathered and offered inwardly, consciously, in love, without residual claim, the same energy that previously fed the archons begins to change its quality. It becomes available for something else. In Hermetic and Rosicrucian thought, the higher forces are not fed by drama or by the contemplation of evil. They are fed by the gathered presence of a soul that no longer leaks. The angelic is nourished by purity of intention, by the heart that has become an altar rather than a marketplace, by the force that remains intact when projection ceases. Christian esotericism speaks of this as the indwelling of the spirit once the outer substitutions are relinquished. The light is not increased by staring at darkness. It is increased when the vessel stops pouring itself outward and begins to hold what is its own. Spiritual pain is real. The inner experience is the true reality. The outer events are secondary. When the pain is no longer projected, compared away, or discharged through self-harm, it can be undergone directly and transmuted. That is the only place the feeding tube is actually cut. Christ's teaching of taking up the cross is the refusal of the projected or substituted sacrifice. The real cross is inward. Everything else is, too often, a sophisticated way of avoiding it while still feeling righteous.